The rumor mill keeps on swirling. How high are the Vikings going to go up for a quarterback today? We'll answer the questions about that and everything else you wanted to know. It's Twitter Tuesday on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that on 3, 1, 2, 3, you like it!
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast. Draft week here. Very excited. I am your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. You can find the show on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. And a big shout out to my hashtag, Everydayers. Sound off if you can. You can find this show wherever you find fine audio content, including YouTube. Maybe even Amazon Fire or Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today is Tuesday. That means it's Twitter Tuesday. That means I'm answering your questions. So if you have questions for me, you can always send them to me at Luke Braun NFL or at Locked On Vikings on Twitter. You can also send an email to lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com, or you can fill out the Google form in the show notes, leave a YouTube comment, find me wherever you can find me. The first chunk of questions that I'm going to do here have to do with the Vikings trading up for a quarterback. Of course, that is the big deal. So I guess the first one I will answer comes from Valhalla Josh, who asks, there are rumors floating around that Kwesi is trying to get up to 2 or 3. What or who would it take to get there, and what QB would you want them to take with that pick? So what it would take to get there, I think, is probably a little bit too much to ask. In the most realistic world I can conjure, they probably trade up to like 14, and then they trade up from 14 to 2. I don't think you can do it all in one pick, because if you're Houston or Arizona, I don't think you want to go down to the 20s, even if it means it gets you like a huge haul, a bunch of first-round picks or whatever. That's probably just a little bit too low for these teams to feel comfortable with. But, get up to 14 from 23 and then get to from 14 to 2. That is probably the avenue, but I just don't. It would take way too many picks that the Vikings could probably figure out a way. Like, they could trade like 4 first-round picks and 2 seconds and Dalvin Cook and one other guy. Like, they could probably put together a package that technically makes sense in a calculator, but I just don't see that being the way that they go. Instead, they probably have a range that says, okay, if this guy falls here, this is what we're going to try to trade. And they probably already called that team and worked out that deal. Somebody actually asked if that's a thing. Yeah, that's a thing. They did it with the Lions last year. If you watched, the Vikings released a video. This wasn't even conjecture or report. They released a video of Kwesi in the war room saying, okay, the board has fallen so-and-so way. Let's take the Lions trade. And they called up the Lions and say, remember that trade? Let's do it. Like, they had clearly already talked about it. But either way, yeah, I think that's the way it would go. Who would I pick? Who would I want them to pick? My QB board is CJ Stroud's my favorite in the class of any of them. Bryce Young is my second favorite. He'll be gone. And it's close, by the way. I don't think the Panthers are being stupid or anything like that. Then my next favorite is Anthony Richardson. I absolutely adore Richardson. And then a sizable gap, and then Will Levis, who I'm actually not that excited about for the Vikings. I think if he ends up being like a Colt or something, I think that works out pretty well for them because he can start right away. But I think his ceiling is a little bit more limited by other stuff that I've talked about in a previous episode. Jacob Tobin says, if the Vikings take Levis at 2, how many shots of whiskey should I take? Okay, so this is probably coming from a mock draft. This is the best way I could trace this. It's a mock draft at the Draft Network from a guy named Jamie Eisner, who I don't know anything about Jamie Eisner, so I don't know if he's a credible, proven reporter, or if he's just somebody who works for the website or whatever. No familiarity. That's my bad. But he wrote a mock draft and had the Vikings trading up to 2. Didn't say the trade details, so I don't really know there. But it says the blurb is really interesting here. So if you Google Vikings Will Levis right now, you'll find about 600 articles. I'm going to take a blurb from one of those articles. Or the title of those articles. I'll read one out loud here that says, loud rumblings, Vikings could trade up to take Will Levis with loud rumblings in quotes. Well, here is the actual source material here, and listen very carefully to the wording. It talks about how you may have seen that Will Levis became the odds-on favorite to be the number 2 overall pick. And now I quote, "But I don't think that's because the Vikings are taking him. I've heard loud rumblings that Minnesota is very active in trying to trade up for a quarterback, and I think they will pull off a blockbuster here. Levis will succeed Kirk Cousins, yada, yada, yada." Okay, did you see what happened there? Do you see what's happening to people? Can you tell where the reporting ends and the opining begins? Because these are very different things. And what I will say about people who are reporting rumors and things that they are hearing, like it seems like Jamie's doing here, they're very, very careful with exactly what they're saying. Because if they reveal too much information, they might get in trouble. They might lose that source. So they have to be very, very, very careful. And articles that say loud rumblings that the Vikings are trading up to 2 are being, I honestly think, fundamentally dishonest at worst, and at best, lazy. And I have no qualms in saying that. The report here is that the Vikings are active in trying to trade up for a quarterback, which I believe. We've seen that in a whole bunch of places. This is the latest one. I think they will pull off a blockbuster here is speculation. That's just Jamie kind of saying his opinion on what he's going to do, and it's as valid as anybody's. But you have to be really careful with this stuff because media outlets, especially the aggregator kind of outlets, the news outlets, websites that just kind of like compile what they can compile, Twitter accounts that are aggregators, are not going to be honest for you. They just aren't. I'm sorry. They just are not an honest operation. They're trying to get the best clickbait. They're not trying to inform you. And so we have to use our own critical thinking skills a little bit. I never want to be that guy. Maybe to put a little clickbait in the title sometimes, but I'll be very, very clear in what I think you should know and what I think is trying to lead you astray here. And that's why you should come to Locked On Vikings, because I'm going to try to take care of you. I don't want you to get the wrong idea just because I thought it would be more entertaining to talk about. You know what I mean? Anyways, how many shots of whiskey should you take if the Vikings take Levis? As many as you want, man. A lot of people love Levis. A lot of people disagree with me. They think Levis should be the second QB off the board after Bryce Young. A lot of people just have that board. Say, yeah, no, that would make sense. He should be second. All right, maybe they're right. I don't know. Broyles asks, a lot of talk about the Vikings trading up. Does it make any sense that it would be a smokescreen, possibly by another team seeking trade partners? Yeah, totally, right? It could be a team like Arizona or Houston trying to trade down, saying, man, the Vikings are really trying hard. You're going to have to put in a good bid. We've already gotten some calls. Yeah, absolutely, totally. That's something that absolutely happens. And the way that they would do that is by having somebody talk to, say, a Jamie Eisner, or somebody who's going to write it up and get a big thing going about how the Vikings are really trying to trade up for Will. If you want Will Levis, would be Houston, right? And if you want Will Levis, you better give us a real good deal, because the Vikings are really, really active in that QB market. You're competing with them. You just have to make somebody think it. Doesn't have to be true. Vikings Polls says, what are the odds we don't draft a QB? Odds we don't draft a QB in the first, I think, are definitely sizable, just because there's stuff about that you can't control. Maybe another team outbids you. Maybe the team you were going to trade up with backs out of the deal. All kinds of stuff could happen. Depends on how the board is. Maybe the guy that they would have traded up for goes second overall, and all right, we didn't get that. But in those events where they don't get a first round quarterback, I think most of them have the Vikings taking a quarterback later in the draft. Somebody like a Jake Haener or Jaron Hall, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Tanner McKee, these kind of later guys that you take with a 5th round pick or whatever, and you just throw a swing at it. See if that guy turns out. And if not, it's not going to change the way you behave in 2024. You're probably going after it in 2024 anyways. But I would say the odds that we don't draft a QB at all, 5%. I'd be really pretty surprised if the Vikings came away from the draft without any QBs. I mean, the board could always just fall in a way where it never makes sense to. But I think that's like what it would take. I didn't get through nearly enough of these questions. I have so many questions to get to. I'm not going to get to all of yours, so I apologize for that, but I'll get to as many as I can. Before I do that, though, let me talk to you about a good old Gramble. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book for a reason. And part of that reason is that its app is safe, secure, and very easy to use. Another part of that reason is the no sweat first bet. If you are just signing on, if you're going to gamble for the first time, maybe on the draft or maybe the NBA or NHL playoffs, MLB, you can go to fanduel.com/locked on and you can get a no sweat first bet. That means if you whiff on that first bet, you could get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets just as a credit for signing up at fanduel.com/locked on. You can bet on team spreads. You can bet on player props, smash them all together and do a parlay. You can bet on where will Levis go? Will he be the 3rd overall pick, the 4th overall pick? Is he a Texan? Is he a Colt? Is he something else? Is he a Viking? You can bet on all of that stuff at fanduel.com. And if you go to fanduel.com/locked on, you can get that no sweat first bet. FanDuel, make every moment more. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. And a special shout out to my #everydayers. There is so much stuff going on draft weekend here on the Locked On Network. I will be live on Locked On Vikings for most of the first round up until the Vikings pick. And then when the Vikings pick, we'll react to it together. And then I'll have to sign off to start working on all my recap stuff. But then after that, you can go check out the Locked On Minnesota Sports YouTube page where they'll be live with Sam Ekstrom and Luke Inman. Or if you want the national perspective, you can go to the Locked On NFL Scouting YouTube page where there will also be a live draft hangout, a little more chill with a bunch of the Locked On hosts talking about everything. You know, we'll get reactions and stuff for everybody. All kinds of great stuff going on. For me, I'm going to continue on with this Twitter Tuesday mailbag. The next one comes from The Missed Kick, who says, Anthony Richardson to the Vikings would be super dope because he's cool and athletic and fun. Hard agree. Also, if I had to guess, I would guess that he is the guy that the Vikings are super high. They're super high on somebody. If I had to guess, I would guess it's Richardson, but it's a very loose guess. I'm not that sure. I have to be humble about that, but look, gun to my head, if I had to make a guess, that would be the guess. And that would be very cool. The next question would be, what happens with Kirk? Play out his contract while Richardson sits, bench mid-season, traded to a team he likes. I would say that Kirk plays out the season. It would be like an Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes thing in 2017. Alex Smith was the quarterback in 2017. It was like, no, this is a redshirt year, Anthony Richardson. You're chilling, you're learning, work on your mechanics, learn the playbook. This is a redshirt year, no pressure at all. You're not even going in if they get hurt. We're keeping Nick Mullins on the staff. So you're not even going in if Kirk gets hurt. You are in the reserves and you're learning. And then next year is your time to shine. We'll let Kirk walk. That's probably what happens. And honestly, I think that's the way they do it, even if it's somebody who's more day one ready, like Stroud or even Levis, who I think both of those guys can start day one. I still think the Vikings would say, nah, learn the system, get used to the NFL pace. We have the luxury of a Kirk Cousins who can start right now. We don't have to throw you in. You can spend a whole year getting ready. And even if you already are ready, get more ready. That's all right. We have the luxury of sort of waiting. I think that's the way that would happen. And then he walks. Luke, I am your father, says, is it too drastic to want to absolutely give up on Kwesi if he drafts Hendon Hooker in the first round? Because I feel like it's a slap in the face to the fans that want to field a contender next year, with contender in quotes. Okay, yeah, it feels like you're mad about something that hasn't happened yet. And we have to have a talk, I think, as a community about this. There's a question from Ryan Higgins who says, are you concerned about where the Vikings are going? Extremely bad defensively and not many picks and possibly drafting a QB. What do you mean am I concerned with where the Vikings are going? It's the draft. There's so many people that are like, hey, is it actually bad to be a Vikings fan? Is Viking bad? Is Viking bad? And it's like, stop. This is the one time of the year where you can just be like unbridled optimism. The Vikings are getting more players and you can absolutely be excited about all of them, no matter who they are. Just have fun with it. And then we can get more serious at camp and we can say, oh, if someone's a bust. But look, if you were in 2016 and you had a whole bunch of fun talking about Laquan Treadwell and watching his highlight tapes from Ole Miss and stuff, that doesn't get less fun just because Laquan Treadwell busted out. And I didn't do that. I didn't really care about the Treadwell pick. I didn't really have an opinion one way or another. I didn't really look at him that close. And then he busted. And I was pretty upset. Sucks that he busted. And I was exactly as upset as people who were upset when they picked him because they went, I knew it. They should have. All those people who employed defensive pessimism, didn't seem to be that much less upset. It didn't seem to really work. So I don't know. I'm not a believer in the defensive pessimism. Is it too drastic to be upset before a thing happened? Yes, it's very drastic to be upset. Hendon Hooker might be good. I might just be wrong about him. That's just my opinion anyways. And we have to have that level of humility. All of these, that's probably my strongest take this year is that Hendon Hooker shouldn't be a first round quarterback. And that I don't see him having very good odds of starting in the league, but like, I have to acknowledge, I have to volunteer the possibility of being wrong, or else I don't think you should trust me. I don't think you should trust somebody who's not willing to be wrong about that stuff. Yeah, it could be. I don't know. Maybe we're just wrong. But saying it's a slap to the face to fans is hubris. I think that means you're way too confident in your take. I would never say something like that. Stefan Larson says, are you looking forward to the Vikings trading up to 12 to draft Quentin Johnston? Here's another guy. So a lot of people ask, like, what's your doomsday scenario? Hendon Hooker is probably the doomsday scenario. Quentin Johnston is one I really wouldn't like, but that is a very divisive guy. There's a lot of people that love him. So I'm just one opinion there. What I will say is I don't see them trading up for not a quarterback. If they're trading up, it's probably for a QB. Otherwise, the value just doesn't really seem very Kwesi to do that, especially for somebody like Johnston, who, while he's very different from the rest of the wide receiver class, it's not like he's the unanimous best guy. It'd be one thing if it was like, I don't want to say Bijan because then you bring in the running back value thing, but it'd be one thing if it was like, Devin Witherspoon is gone and Christian Gonzalez or maybe other way around. Christian Gonzalez is gone, Devin Witherspoon's on the board, and then like Joey Porter goes and Cam Smith and Deontay Banks go. And it's like Devin Witherspoon and the next best guys, I don't know, like DJ Turner, Emmanuel Forbes, I don't know, Keely Ringo. And so there's this like huge cliff, then maybe trading up makes sense. But not when there's Addison and Smith and Jigba and all those guys. I maybe one of those guys has gone by 12. So I don't see them doing that. I think if they're going to take a receiver, they probably just take whoever falls to them. But I think it's even more likely that they trade back. Sam Delker asks, who are some linebackers in this class that seem like a good fit for Flores? I keep hearing he likes linebackers that can stack and shed, and unfortunately that seems to be a weakness with many in this undersized linebacker class. Super is. Yeah, big time. Trenton Simpson is the one that I've actually like taken the time to scout. And yeah, he's like, he reminds me a lot of Brian Asamoah in kind of good and bad ways. Jack Campbell, I think, is the name that you're looking for here, Sam. That is, he's a stack and shed, old school thumper kind of linebacker. And he's in the running, I think, for the number one linebacker in the class, but I don't think most people have him there, but he's up there and he's probably a day two guy. Maybe like a back half of round one kind of guy. That seems to be his usual range. Jack Campbell out of Iowa, yeah. Jedis Agent says, does Stroud's S2 score change how you view him? Could he just be a bad test taker? No, it doesn't. S2, so for those who aren't aware, S2 is like the new Wonderlic kind of. It's a cognitive test, but it's not an intelligence test. It's like a visual processing reflexes. It's probably better described as like a reflex test. Like how fast can you process visual information? And it's like click on the circle, click on the triangle kind of stuff. It is an approximation, and we don't know how well it simulates football. We don't know how predictive it is, how instructive it is. And we probably need several years of data before we really have a great sense for that. So no, I don't really put any stock into it right now. Put a pin in that till like the end of the decade, I think. Bradley Norris says, do you think Kwesi has pre-negotiated trades up or down lined up if the board falls a certain way? Yes. Yeah. That we talked about that. Kyle H says, if the report of the Vikings releasing Dalvin before the draft is true, wouldn't that indicate that they have a draft day trade in place for Danielle Hunter? The report you're talking about is that they could release him before the draft, but also that they were trying to trade him. They are trying to trade him. I think that's public information at this point. He is on the trade block. Many people have said this. I think Albert Breer said he's on the trade block. Darren Wolfson's been saying this for months. He is on the trade block going into the draft. I don't think that they would cut him before the draft, because if they were going to cut him before the draft, I think they probably already would have to do right by him. Because there's no real functional difference between cutting him now and having cut him, before the league year started, like they did with Kendricks and Thielen. He probably would have been part of that round. Since there wasn't like a guaranteed money thing that mattered once he got the surgery, every day is kind of the same as the next day. Doing it the day before the draft just is it would just be a dick move to Dalvin, which I don't think the Vikings want to do that. So I would expect that they go into the draft with Dalvin on the roster. They try to trade him on draft weekend. It either works out or it doesn't. And then if it doesn't, then they cut him after the draft. But my guess is that they are trying to get draft picks this year for him. And the only way they give up on that is if there are no more draft picks this year left because the draft is over. That's the way that I read that report. I do not think it has anything to do with Danielle Hunter, no. Old school, and Kyle had a whole thing about how like that would be the cap clearing move that you would need to pay for the extra dead cap acceleration that would come with trading Danielle Hunter, which again, I kind of say, okay, zoom out and look at what you're suggesting here. Cutting Dalvin Cook to make room to trade away Danielle Hunter. What do you need back to make all of that worth it? How many draft picks do you need to be worth losing Dalvin Cook and Danielle Hunter off your roster? What is that worth to you? And do you see a team paying that for Danielle Hunter? And I think my answer there is probably it's way too much. I have too many left. I'm not going to get to all your questions. I'm so sorry. But before I get to whatever questions I am going to get to, this episode was brought to you by BetterHelp. Therapy is a very important thing to me. I've been in therapy for years now, and it has helped me, I think, just improve as a person in my personal life. Helped me deal with difficult things and all of that stuff. And it's not that there's some crisis that I'm always on the edge of, and I really need therapy to keep me. I think a lot of people, especially dudes, especially older dudes, if you're a generation or two above me, perhaps, it has this stigma as this thing you only do when you're like too weak to deal with your problems yourself. It's not that. It's maintenance. It's mental and emotional health. It's like going to the gym for that, right? It would be like saying, yeah, no, I'm too physically gifted. I don't need to exercise. Like that would be nonsense. That's the way that I view therapy, and BetterHelp can help you get started in therapy. A lot of people will just call one therapist, or even via BetterHelp. You could have a bad experience with a therapist, and that happens. And BetterHelp is set up to help you get away from that bad experience and get to somebody that actually works for you, help match you up with somebody that's right for you based on your unique situation, your unique needs and preferences, and whatever's comfortable for you, whether it's calling or a video chat or texting or whatever. So you can go to betterhelp.com/lockedon and you can get 10% off of your first month. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off of your first month. Moving on with this Twitter Tuesday episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast. The next one comes from Old Skull, who says, do you think edge is a less discussed potential need and pick the Vikings may address in round one? Definitely. Yeah, I have not talked about edge nearly enough. That's not because I don't think it will be a pick. It's just because I have personally decided to focus really hard on certain positions so that I can give you better information. And I don't want to just kind of like half look at a bunch of edge rushers and give you a bunch of half baked takes. I think I owe you more than that as people who listen to me. So I want to give you something more valuable than that. So I haven't looked at the edge rushers. I've just decided to kind of not have takes on them, and that's okay. And you don't have to have an opinion on every guy, but that doesn't mean I don't think it's a possibility for the Vikings. And if they do pick an edge rusher, then I'll go deep on that guy. But yeah, I mean, look, Danielle Hunter's contract is out at the end of 2023. Zadarius Smith's contract only has 2 years left on it. Marcus Davenport's contract is only a 1-year deal. I don't know if any of that is going to hold. Maybe one of these guys gets traded. Maybe people get cut. Maybe people get extended. But as it stands right now, they have one like dedicated starting edge rusher under contract for 2024, and it's Zadarius Smith, who might be cut. So yeah, definitely a future need, which would certainly be justifiable to take an edge rusher in round one, especially with how good this class is. Alex Gowan says, if you had to pick a position group, the Vikings will wait until day 3 to address what position would it be and why. The easy answer is running back for, like value reasons. And just because I like the day 3 running backs a lot, guys like Deuce Vaughn, Kendry Miller, that seem to be day 3 running backs that I think could absolutely be contributing members of this committee immediately. And as a 5th round pick, getting a contributor right away is a pretty good outcome. But if I wanted to do something spicier, I'd say quarterback. Let's say they strike out. It would be me predicting that they strike out round 1. And then if they do that, they probably address quarterback in round 3. It's kind of a backdoor way to be right about that. But yeah, that would probably be my next pick if I had to try to predict. Just, again, there's a lot about that they can't control. Lemur asks an interesting one. Hypothetical expansion team gets every pick in the first 2 rounds, can't trade any picks or sign free agents. How many wins does that team have this year? Man, they'd be hard pressed to get one. A team of all rookies, and a lot of those guys might bust. A lot of those guys, you're not getting the best 64 players in the draft because you have to build out a team. You need to take, you need to take 10 linemen, and you can't necessarily, where is the 10th lineman going? I don't know if there's going to be 10 linemen taken in the first 2 days. So you're taking guys that are worse. And leaving the other teams with even some rookies that are probably better than your guys. Plus, it's just a team of all rookies. Yeah, I think versus a team of NFL veterans and all the star power that comes with that, I would be hard-pressed to see that team winning a game. Ingram's Left Foot says, what's the dumb rumor you expect to come to be this long weekend? There's always a few dumb rumors that come out to be true despite all good sense. Man, I think it is absolutely insane, if you look at the betting odds, that CJ Stroud is not the easy number 2 pick. And I think the rumors around that, there's some really dumb stuff, and I think some of it's going to turn out to be true. CJ Stroud is such a complete player, and I think we have too much time to overthink these guys. He's just a really good quarterback. No, he does not have the arm that Levis or Richardson has, but his arm is like very good. Like, it's a very much a positive trait of his. It is a strength. It's just getting overshadowed by guys with shinier toys. Darn Many says, thought tight end or astrology linebacker. I'm going to be honest, I have no idea who you're talking about here. So, thought tight end. Horny Vikings go. The team should always strive to be a little hornier. Corey Hermanson says, do you think teams should learn draft info through the betting market? Or do you think teams learn draft info through the betting markets? Do you think Kwesi knows the info behind big line shifts before Vegas? I think he does. Yeah, I think the betting markets are more informed by the teams rather than the teams being informed by the betting markets. Otherwise, we'd see things solidify a lot more, especially during this time. Yeah, I don't think that. I think the betting markets are reading teams, not the other way around. Lucas VDB says, what's your least favorite realistic pick for the Vikings? I already talked about it a little bit. A lot of people ask this question. What's your doomsday, whatever? What's your nightmare scenario? These are just my opinions. A lot of people would say, wow, that's insane. I would love all 3 of those guys, but Hendon Hooker, Quentin Johnston, Keely Ringo in the first round. Those 3 guys would make me pretty upset. But again, a lot of people would say, wait, what? I love all 3 of those guys. What are you talking about? Those would be great. Maybe you could listen to those people. Malcolm Biggles says, is it possible to be too excited for the draft? I was accused of being too excited. It's them who are wrong, not me, right? Absolutely, Malcolm. Live your truth, king. Don't let the people get you down. Don't let the defensive pessimists get you down. DJ 2 Last Names, also same thing, says, I will be happy with whatever the Vikings do. Does that make me dead inside? Exact opposite. That makes you strong. Makes you more alive than any of us, DJ 2 Last Names. Live the life you want to live and go enjoy the bright sunshine. Eric the Red says, draft day meal? I don't really have, it's not like a Super Bowl thing to me where I like cook something special. Probably just eat like I normally do, which is usually I'll like make something for the week in bulk and kind of assemble it all week. Some kind of salad, I think. I don't know. Trying to be good. Joshua Brook says, what video games are you playing at the moment? This will be the last one. Currently playing Dragon Age Origins. I played the first one, the third one first. Dragon Age Inquisition I played when it first came out. Because I was interning at a media company that covered E3. So I was at E3 in 2014, and there was this huge BioWare thing. And I love BioWare. I love the Knights of the Old Republic. I like Mass Effect. And I didn't even know there was a fantasy BioWare series. I was like, oh my God, yeah, I gotta play that. I couldn't get my hands on the first 2, though. And then I forgot about the whole thing. So I played the third one just with no context at all. Thought it was pretty fun, but then kind of forgot about the whole thing. And I was like, wait, I can play the trilogy. I can go get like retrofitted or backfitted games from like Xbox 360 days and play them now, which is now what I'm doing. Boy, the polygons look weird nowadays. We had an uncanny valley moment there in the kind of 2008 to 2014 world, didn't we? But anyways, it's still really fun. I really like the mechanics of it. That's what I'm up to. Tomorrow is probably going to be corners, and then I'll do the QBs on Thursday. I'm trying to watch as many QBs as possible because I want to get to the day 3 guys. I do think that that's a real possibility that they end up with like a Jaren Hall, which I really like him. I'll talk about it on Thursday. So I will see you all for the rest of the week. Remember, I'll be live. I'll be going all weekend as well. So come hang out. I'll see you all then. And as always, Skull.